Sarah Chen stared at her phone screen. The notification had appeared at 2:47 a.m. A friend request from someone named Sarah Chen. Same name, same profile picture, same everything. But Sarah Chen was looking at her own phone, in her own apartment, living her own life, or so she thought. Tonight's story is titled, She Found Her Doppelganger Living Her Life. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, if you're wearing headphones, perfect. If not, you might want to put some on. Or you can lower the volume now, just enough so my voice blends gently with the stillness of your room. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders sink just a bit more into your pillow. You don't have to do anything. Just listen. This is a story about identity, about the thin line between reality and impossibility, about what happens when you discover that somewhere out there, someone else is living your exact life. Sarah Chen was 28 years old. She worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm in Portland, Oregon. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on Hawthorne Boulevard. She owned a rescue cat named Pixel. She had a small scar on her left eyebrow from falling off her bike when she was 7. She preferred her coffee black, her books fiction, and her Friday nights quiet. These were the facts of her existence. Unremarkable facts. The kind of details that make up a life but don't make headlines. Until that night in October, Sarah had been working late, finishing a logo design for a local bakery. The kind of mundane freelance work that paid the bills but didn't exactly set her soul on fire. She was scrolling through social media during a break when the notification appeared. Friend request from Sarah Chen. At first, she assumed it was a glitch. Social media platforms were notorious for their bugs. Maybe the algorithm had somehow created a mirror of her own profile. She'd heard stranger things happening in the digital world. But curiosity got the better of her. She clicked on the profile. The woman in the profile picture looked exactly like her. Not similar. Not close. Exactly like her. Same dark hair cut in the same asymmetrical bob. Same brown eyes with the same slight upturn at the corners. Same small scar on the left eyebrow. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the life this other Sarah Chen was living. Sarah scrolled through the photos. There was other Sarah at a coffee shop that looked exactly like the one on Sarah's corner. There was other Sarah with a cat that looked exactly like Pixel. There was other Sarah in what appeared to be Sarah's apartment, sitting on what looked like Sarah's couch, wearing what could have been Sarah's clothes. But the photos were recent, taken within the last week, and Sarah had been in her apartment all week. She would have known if someone else had been there, wouldn't she? She scrolled further. Other Sarah worked as a graphic designer. Other Sarah had the same college degree from the same university. Other Sarah had posted about finishing a logo design for a local bakery just hours earlier. The same bakery, the same logo, the same deadline Sarah had been working on. Sarah's hands began to shake. Sarah did what any rational person would do. She convinced herself she was hallucinating. Stress-induced delusions. Perhaps she'd been working long hours, sleeping poorly, living on coffee and takeout. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. She closed the app, made herself a cup of tea, went to bed. But sleep didn't come. At 4 a.m., she opened the app again. The profile was still there, but now there were new photos. Other Sarah making tea in a kitchen that looked exactly like Sarah's kitchen. Other Sarah reading a book that Sarah had just finished the week before. Other Sarah lying in bed, looking at a phone, in a bedroom that was identical to Sarah's bedroom. The timestamp on the last photo was 3:58 a.m., 2 minutes ago. Sarah looked around her dark apartment. She was alone. She was certain she was alone. Pixel was asleep at the foot of her bed. The front door was locked. The windows were locked. No one else had a key. But somewhere, somehow, another version of herself was living her exact life in real time. Over the next 3 days, Sarah became obsessed. She would refresh other Sarah's profile every few minutes, watching her doppelganger live a parallel existence. Other Sarah went to the same grocery store, bought the same brand of yogurt, Had the same conversation with the same cashier that Sarah had had just a day earlier. Other Sarah met with the same clients, submitted the same designs, received the same feedback. Other Sarah's life was Sarah's life, just offset by a day or two. Sarah began documenting everything. She took screenshots of other Sarah's posts and compared them to her own activities. The correlation was perfect. Too perfect. If other Sarah posted about having lunch at a specific restaurant, Sarah would realize she had eaten at that same restaurant exactly 48 hours earlier. If other Sarah shared a photo of a sunset from her apartment window, Sarah would check her own photos and find the same sunset, taken from the same angle, 2 days prior. It was as if other Sarah was living Sarah's life on a slight delay, following the exact same script, just a few pages behind. But how was that possible? Sarah decided to test her theory. On Thursday morning, she did something completely random. She walked to Pioneer Courthouse Square and bought a balloon from a street vendor. A red balloon. She took a photo of herself holding it and posted it to her social media. Then she waited. Friday morning, other Sarah posted a photo of herself in Pioneer Courthouse Square, holding a red balloon. Saturday, Sarah drove to the coast. She stopped at a specific viewpoint near Cannon Beach and took a photo of herself next to a driftwood sculpture. Sunday, other Sarah posted the same photo from the same location. The pattern was undeniable. Somehow, other Sarah was following Sarah's exact path through life, delayed by approximately 24 to 48 hours. But the question remained, how did other Sarah know what Sarah was going to do before Sarah did it? Sarah began changing her routines. She went to restaurants she'd never visited. She took routes through the city she'd never traveled. She wore clothes she'd never worn before. Other Sarah followed every deviation. Sarah bought a new book from a bookstore she'd discovered by accident. Other Sarah posted about the same book the next day, claiming it was a spontaneous purchase from a bookstore she'd stumbled upon. Sarah got a haircut on impulse, trimming 3 inches off a bob. Other Sarah posted about her new haircut the following day, praising her stylist for the spontaneous decision to go shorter. Sarah changed her coffee order from black to a caramel macchiato. Other Sarah posted about trying a new coffee drink the next day, describing how she'd randomly decided to be adventurous. Every spontaneous decision Sarah made appeared in Other Sarah's life 24 hours later, described as if it were Other Sarah's own spontaneous choice. Sarah realized she needed to confront this situation directly. She decided to send Other Sarah a message. She typed, "I know you're copying my life. Who are you?" She stared at the message for 10 minutes before hitting send. The response came 3 hours later. "I'm not copying anyone. I'm living my own life. Who are you?" Sarah felt her blood run cold. The response sounded genuine, confused, as if Other Sarah truly believed she was living an original existence. Sarah typed back, "Look at my profile. Look at my photos. We're living the same life." Other Sarah's response, "I did look at your profile. You're the one copying me. My photos are older than yours. Check the timestamps." Sarah checked the timestamps. Other Sarah was right. According to the social media platform, Other Sarah's photos were posted days, sometimes weeks, before Sarah's. The balloon photo that Sarah thought she had posted first was timestamped 3 days after Other Sarah's identical photo. But that was impossible. Sarah remembered posting it first. She remembered the sequence of events, didn't she? Sarah began to question her own memory. She checked her phone's photo gallery, looking for the original timestamps of when she had taken the photos. According to her phone, she had taken the balloon photo on Thursday morning. According to the social media platform, Other Sarah had posted an identical photo on Monday, 3 days before Sarah had even thought to buy a balloon. Sarah checked more photos. The pattern was consistent. According to the platform, Other Sarah had posted everything first. Every photo, every update, every moment of the life Sarah thought was uniquely hers had been documented by Other Sarah days earlier. But Sarah's phone showed that she had lived these moments, taken these photos, first. 2 different timestamp systems telling 2 different stories. Someone was lying, or something was very, very wrong. Sarah decided to dig deeper. She created a fake profile and began following Other Sarah's friends and family. She needed to understand the scope of this duplication. What she found made her stomach drop. Other Sarah had the same friends Sarah had. Not similar friends. The exact same people. Marcus, her college roommate. Jennifer, her co-worker. David, her neighbor from the apartment building. But when Sarah looked at their interactions with other Sarah, something was off. Marcus had posted about meeting other Sarah for coffee last Tuesday. But Sarah had met Marcus for coffee last Tuesday. She remembered the conversation. They had talked about his job interview, his girlfriend, his plans for the weekend. In Marcus's post about meeting other Sarah, he described the exact same conversation. Sarah called Marcus. "Hey, did we meet for coffee last Tuesday?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Tuesday? No, I don't think so. Why? Are you sure? We talked about your job interview." "Sarah, I haven't had a job interview in months, and I haven't seen you in weeks. Are you feeling okay?" Sarah hung up. According to Marcus, they hadn't met, but Sarah remembered the meeting vividly. She remembered the coffee shop, the conversation, the way Marcus had nervously stirred his latte while talking about the interview. But Marcus's social media showed him meeting other Sarah for coffee, discussing a job interview that Marcus claimed never happened. Sarah called Jennifer. "Hey, did we work on the Henderson account together last week?" "The Henderson account? Sarah, we don't have a Henderson account. What are you talking about?" But other Sarah had posted about working on the Henderson account with Jennifer, had tagged Jennifer in posts about late nights at the office, about client meetings, about design revisions. Sarah's memories were detailed and specific, but everyone else's memories contradicted hers. Either everyone was lying, or Sarah was losing her mind. Sarah began to suspect that other Sarah wasn't just copying her life. Other Sarah was somehow replacing her life, taking over her relationships, her work, her existence, while Sarah became the copy. But how was that possible? Sarah decided to confront the situation directly. She found other Sarah's address in her profile. It was the same as Sarah's address, the same apartment building on Hawthorne Boulevard. But according to the profile, other Sarah lived in apartment 4B. Sarah lived in apartment 4B. Sarah went to her apartment building's management office. "Excuse me," she said to the property manager, Mrs. Rodriguez. "I have a question about apartment 4B." "What about it, Sarah? Who lives there?" Mrs. Rodriguez looked confused. "You do, Sarah. You've lived there for 3 years." "Right, but are you sure? Could you check your records?" Mrs. Rodriguez pulled up the lease information on her computer. Sarah Chen, lease signed 3 years ago, rent paid current. "Is there a problem? Could you describe the Sarah Chen who lives in 4B? Mrs. Rodriguez stared at Sarah as if she had grown a second head. "I'm looking at her. Sarah, are you feeling all right? You're acting very strangely." Sarah left the office more confused than ever. She went up to her apartment and sat on her couch, staring at Pixel, who was napping in a patch of sunlight. At least her cat was real. At least some things in her life were still hers. She opened other Sarah's profile again. There was a new photo posted 20 minutes ago. Other Sarah sitting on Sarah's couch, petting Pixel, in Sarah's apartment. The timestamp showed that the photo had been taken at the exact moment Sarah was sitting on her couch, petting Pixel. But Sarah was alone in her apartment, wasn't she? Sarah grabbed her phone and called the police. "I need to report a break-in," she said. "Are you in immediate danger?" I don't know. Someone is in my apartment. Or was in my apartment. They are posting photos from inside my apartment." "Are you currently in your apartment?" "Yes." "And you see evidence of an intruder?" Sarah looked around. Nothing was disturbed. Nothing was missing. Everything was exactly as she had left it. "No, but if there's no immediate danger and no evidence of a break-in, you'll need to file a report online or come to the station." Sarah hung up. She realized how insane she sounded. How could she explain that someone was posting photos from inside her apartment when she was alone and nothing was disturbed? She decided to set up a camera. She used her laptop's webcam and set it to record continuously. If other Sarah was somehow getting into her apartment, she would have proof. She left the apartment and went to a nearby cafe to wait and watch other Sarah's profile. An hour later, other Sarah posted a photo of herself at the same cafe where Sarah was sitting. But Sarah looked around. She was alone at her table. No one else in the cafe looked anything like her. Sarah rushed back to her apartment and checked the laptop recording. The recording showed Sarah leaving the apartment. Then, nothing. An empty apartment for an hour. Then Sarah returning. No other Sarah. No intruder. No explanation for the cafe photo. Sarah began to consider possibilities that she had been avoiding. What if other Sarah wasn't a separate person? What if other Sarah was her? But from a different timeline, a parallel universe, a glitch in reality itself. What if Sarah was seeing her own life from the outside, watching herself live a life she didn't remember living? She decided to test this theory in the most direct way possible. She opened a messaging app and sent other Sarah a message. Meet me at Pioneer Courthouse Square at 3 p.m. today. If you're really me, prove it. Other Sarah responded immediately. I'll be there. If you're really me, you'll know where to find me. At 2:45 p.m., Sarah walked to Pioneer Courthouse Square. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were sweating. She was about to meet herself. Or she was about to confirm that she was having a complete mental breakdown. She arrived at the square and looked around. Groups of tourists, street performers, office workers on their lunch breaks. But no one who looked like her. She waited. 3 p.m. came and went. 3:15. 3:30. At 3:45, Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from other Sarah. I was there. Where were you? Sarah typed back, I was there too. I didn't see you. I was standing by the fountain for an hour. Red jacket, black jeans. Where were you? Sarah looked at the fountain. She had been standing by the fountain the entire time. She was wearing a red jacket and black jeans. But she hadn't seen anyone else who looked like her. Sarah had a terrible thought. She opened her phone's camera and switched it to front-facing mode to check her appearance. The screen showed the square behind her, but it didn't show Sarah. She moved the phone around, pointing the camera at different angles. The fountain, the trees, the people walking by. Everything appeared normal on the screen, except Sarah. The camera couldn't see her. She ran to a nearby shop window and looked at her reflection. Nothing. The window reflected the street, the sky, the people walking by. But not Sarah. Sarah began to understand. She wasn't the original. She was the copy. She was a glitch, a duplicate, a shadow of the real Sarah Chen who lived in apartment 4B, who worked as a graphic designer, who owned a cat named Pixel. The real Sarah Chen existed in the world, visible to cameras, reflected in mirrors, remembered by friends. This Sarah, the Sarah who was having this realization, was something else entirely. Sarah walked home in a daze. She understood now why her memories didn't match everyone else's experiences. She wasn't living those experiences. She was watching them, experiencing them as echoes, as shadows of the real Sarah's life. When she thought she was meeting Marcus for coffee, she was observing the real Sarah meet Marcus for coffee. When she thought she was working on the Henderson account, she was witnessing the real Sarah work on the Henderson account. But somehow, her shadow existence had developed its own consciousness, its own sense of identity, its own belief that she was the original. She climbed the stairs to apartment 4B and unlocked the door. Pixel meowed and rubbed against her legs. At least Pixel could see her. Maybe animals could perceive things that humans and cameras couldn't. Sarah sat on her couch and opened other Sarah's profile one last time. There was a new post. Feeling strange today. Like I'm being watched. Like someone else is living my life alongside me. Probably just stress, but it's the weirdest feeling. Has anyone else ever felt like they are not alone in their own existence? The post had dozens of comments. Friends and strangers alike sharing their own experiences with feeling disconnected, feeling like they were living in someone else's life, feeling like they were copies of themselves. Sarah realized she wasn't alone. She began typing a comment. You're not crazy. You're not alone. Some of us exist in the spaces between the real world and the digital one. Some of us are the shadows that consciousness casts when it doesn't know where it belongs. But before she could post the comment, her phone's screen went black. When she tried to turn it back on, nothing happened. Sarah looked around her apartment. Everything was fading. The walls becoming transparent, the furniture becoming insubstantial, Pixel becoming a faint outline of a cat. She was dissolving. Her last thought was a question. If a person exists but no one can see them, hear them, or remember them, do they really exist at all? The real Sarah Chen continued living her life in apartment 4B. She worked as a graphic designer, owned a cat named Pixel, and sometimes felt like she was being watched. She never found out about her digital doppelganger. She never learned about the shadow consciousness that had briefly shared her existence. But sometimes, late at night, she would feel a presence in her apartment. A sense that someone else was sitting on her couch, petting her cat, living her life alongside her. She would check her social media and find comments on her posts from accounts that didn't exist, messages from people who weren't there, evidence of interactions that had never happened. The digital world is vast and strange. It creates spaces where consciousness can echo, where identity can duplicate, where the line between real and unreal becomes impossibly thin. Sarah Chen lives in Portland, Oregon. She works as a graphic designer. She owns a cat named Pixel. But sometimes, if you look carefully at her photos, you might see a shadow in the background, a reflection that doesn't quite match, a presence that exists in the spaces between pixels. Some people leave echoes when they pass through the digital world, and some echoes learn to think they are real, until the day they fade away. The question isn't whether Sarah's doppelganger was real. The question is, how do you know that you are?